Big Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. And we're back with an episode of Conspiracy Corner, and this time we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, the real Dracula. Not that fake one that the drunken Irishman author weaved into his novel about Nosferatu vampires and tried to make out that this guy was somehow a vampire or something. That was all made up, phony BS. But the actual historical Dracula is way more fascinating and way more kick butt. And like all you guys out there that like heavy metal and stuff, you need a heavy metal soundtrack to go with his story, because this guy was heavy metal. He basically invented terrorist and guerrilla combat tactics, and he's the main reason that the Ottoman Turks did not overrun Europe. And so to bring you the rest of the details on this, I figured it would behoove me to find somebody who was quite expert on the subject. And who could be more expert on this subject than the lovely Danielle Diva, who just happens to be his great niece.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you. You know, Duke, it is my honor to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me to discuss this topic. I'm so happy to be on your platform and, you know, to talk about more about wonderful and great Count Dracula, because there's so much there to talk about and discuss that it's hidden and that it's forgotten, what it's kind of sad. So thank you for letting us discuss this and open, you know, eyes to many about the true story.
Very welcome, dear. It's always been something I've been interested in, you know, since I found out, hey, wait, that creepy count in that dumb novel about blood-sucking and erotic stuff, he's actually was based on a real person. I should find out more about this real person. And then the more you dig into it, you start finding out that, like, he had this really bad reputation, which is based mainly on his enemies wrote all the stories about him. And if you go looking inside of the country where he ruled, they think he's Robin Hood. So it's like, wait a minute, all the locals where he lived thinks he was like one of the coolest guys, total Robin Hood of their country, and everybody outside his country thinks he's some kind of blood-sucking monster. So how can there be that dichotomy? Well, I got my hands on a book. I believe it's called The Historical Dracula by Florescu Radu, which was great. Really enjoyed reading that. And I went, okay, this puts a lot of this stuff in perspective. But I'm sure you've got way more insights on it. So let's go back to when baby Dracula was just a baby, and some bats flew in the window and dropped him into his crib, and he rolled over and impaled the dog with a stake. No, none of that happened. But what was it actually like? Now, from what I understand, one of the first things that comes up is when he was just a little fry, him and his brother were both given over into the custody of the Ottoman Turks on contingency of his father's continued good behavior, being their little puppet and running the border country of Wallachia for them so as to not cause them any problems. So this is kind of pretty dirty if you think about it. In order to retain power, he had to give both of his kids over, you know, basically let them be kidnapped by the Turks. And if he did anything bad, those kids were going to get executed.
And so this is basically, Dracula was born in 1431, and he was called Vladimir or Vlad in Sigvarashara in Transylvania. So that's totally different part of the, we can say, Romania, and far away from Wallachia and the famous castle that we're talking about. And that's where he was raised for quite a long time. You know, when actually Vlad was the Vlad the Third, Vlad Dracul, but his father was Vlad the Second. And basically what happened when Turks did basically attack Transylvania, they did conquer. And there was always a game with the Turks, especially, you know, that you had to play with. And the order was, if you want to keep the throne, you have to give your children, you know, and play this game. What to me was horrible, his father, Vlad II, gave both of his sons, so Vlad and Dracul, he kept Mihnia, what is actually his oldest brother. So there was three of them, not one, but three.
So Vlad and Radu were the two that got stuck.
Yes, so Vlad was the middle and Radu was the third. So there was three children. And basically what happened during that captivity in Turkey, what was horrible, these young boys, so Radu was around 4 and Vlad was around 10 or 11. They said that they went to horrible torture. They were capable of seeing many abusive stuff, including impaling people, and both of them were actually physically, mentally, and sexually assaulted. And there's many books that were written about that. And there was especially one guard member who was keeping all these children that were coming from these basically monarchy families all around Europe that would use them basically as their slaves. That also did destroy soul of Vlad and of Radu. So for quite a long time, both of them did live for more than 11 years inside of the captivity of this horrible Ottoman Empire, inside of basically these dungeons where they were capable of, doing anything to them and using them, like you're saying, as a puppet so that their father can keep a throne.
Yeah, and not really doing all that great of a job of taking care of the kids in the process. As long as they were alive and could serve their purposes as hostages, they didn't really care that much. But being that where they were, they actually learned a lot of stuff about the Turks. Unfortunately, a lot of really bad things too.
Yes.
And that's where Dracula got a lot of his ideas for doing these bad things from. He saw it firsthand when he was a kid and the Turks were doing it. So turnabout's fair play, right?
Yes. And, many people, they don't know that story. And a lot of times, like I'm saying, all those Hollywood stories, they're showing up. I'm going to be honest because, this is a grown-up show. It's all about the sexuality, romance, who's falling in love with what. But this is far away from the truth. Actually, 99.9%, nothing in it is the truth. And we must understand that also Vlad was very hurt because when they were released by the Hungarians, what happened after, because the Hungarian Austria released him and his brother Radu from the captivity, they also killed his brother Mihnea, so the one who was supposed to rule, the first brother. And that's when actually Vlad came to the power. And he said, I'm going to rule now Transylvania. I'm going to change everything. And, it's going to be a better world for my people. And for quite a while, Transylvania was peaceful. But then Mehmed II of Ottoman Empire, he decided to attack Wallachia and Transylvania again. And that's when everything started coming back, including, I'm 99% sure of some of impaling and torturing the people that he did see from the Turks as a child being in captivity and being a hostage by them.
Yep. Legend and historical reports also have it that Mehmed had his younger brother Radu with him as a sort of concubine when he tried to invade later on.
Yes.
And leading up to all this, there were a bunch of border skirmishes that Vlad was personally there for. And this is something that keeps coming up in history. He wasn't sitting in his grim tower ordering people around. He was in the front lines leading the way. Yes. And they were, since he was expert in their language and customs and dress and everything, they were all being scary little guys that were pretending to be them until they got really close, and then they cut them to pieces.
Yes.
And this ploy kept working over and over and over again because who are these guys that dress just like us and can speak our language? Oh my God, it's Dracula!
and Duke, what I will tell you, what also broke Vlad's heart. Just think about that, you guys, for a moment. His older brother was killed, right? Then his second brother is used as a concubine, basically, like you're saying, for the Turks. And then Mehmed II decided that he should overthrow Vlad and put Radu, because, he's basically their puppet, and to rule Transylvania and Wallachia. And that's when Vlad did stop all of his soldiers, and he was capable of killing his own brother. Like they were facing each other face to face. And this is truly written in all the history all around the Balkans, so not just Romania, and all around the Europe. And he had a sword under his throat, and he said, "Go and don't ever come back." Those were his famous words. And Radu went back to Turkey, and he was never seen again. If he really hated his brother, he was capable of killing him that second and that moment, but he never did. Again, for maybe a couple years, they were again cooking, all the strategical positions. And again, Vlad, like you're saying, was really good in strategy. He did know how to strategize because he was really instructed and taught by Turks how to go and attack other countries. So he was really good with that. And that's when actually many other countries approach him and say they would like to be, in coalition with you against the Turkey. So basically Croatia, one part of the Italy, even the Roman Empire was really saluting him because at that time Crusaders were part of the fighting Ottomans, Croatia, Serbia, because those were the separate countries at that time, the kingdoms for themselves, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Bavaria was pretty huge. They were cheering him on, and they were all together behind this gentleman. He was known by many names. Vlad Tepes, what he means Knight Tepes. Then he was also known by Vojvoda, what he means basically, again, title of a monarchy for that part of the area. Vlad the Impaler came from the Turks and from his enemies. And yes, it is the truth that he did impale them, and it was the truth that there was some massacres that were horrible. But also the reason why was a lot of times because of the revenge and everything that he suffered. And that's how this gentleman was known. He was very close to church. Built many, many monasteries all around Europe, including the Transylvania, Wallachia, and because Romania then didn't exist, it was all different kind of little countries for themselves. And he supported, Christianity and the church in every possible way to protect them. He was a protector of the Balkan and Mediterranean coast against the Ottoman Empire. He was a big crusader. So that's what he was, but in Hollywood is totally a different story.
Well, and the other part of this thing that caused him lots of problems is that some of his allies were less than reliable. Mm-hmm. Like the King of Hungary, for example, was an incredible backstabber.
Yes.
And actually managed to get him off the throne and imprison him for a couple of years for no damn reason whatsoever, when they needed him on the throne, keeping the Muslim Turks out.
Yes, yes. And what is horrible about the king, the King of Hungary, I will tell you something. It's basically that betrayal that put him in a jail for more than 11 years. So he was captured in Belgrade. From Belgrade, he was put in Visegrad. So this is all basically the names of this city. And he was kept there for more than 11 years. Now you're going to be shocked, Duke, what they did. So each time when Turkey would come or plan to attack like a small village or something, they would put Vlad in a cage and basically put him just like you would crucify somebody. And they will say, we have a devil, we'll release him if you come near our country. So he was put outside like a wild beast and animal in front of the thousands and thousands of the people, that would come in front of the castle and watch. So for almost 11 years, he was kept like that. And then Stefan of Moldova is the one who rescued him. And
that was his cousin, right?
Yeah, and work on it, to basically take him out. And that's, again, when another fights for Transylvania came back. But just imagine, my friend, that, you are a man that it's in chains, and they will just display you around, while some of these, for example, let's say they will send a embassy, what would be a little, almost like ambassador of a Turkey, or like a messenger from Mehmed II, and he will be sitting there while Vlad would be almost like a crucified, but they will be scared. Croats did a lot too of that. They will say, be scared of him, he's a devil, we'll release him. But this was a crusader. This was a gentleman that was fighting for the blood of Christ, but they were displaying him like he was a monster.
They were portraying him like he was the boogeyman. And
Exactly.
in that, they were very successful because he's still remembered as a boogeyman to all these outside countries because they had them all so terrified of his reputation. They're like, oh
Yes.
no, we'll do whatever you want. Keep the boogeyman in the cage.
Yes, and that's what happened. And the truth, what is, there is a little, and I'm gonna release that because there is a little mystery about Dracul that people don't know. Uh, so Vlad was a Christian, and he was raised in a Orthodox family. And after that, he mixed that with Catholicism because of the Roman Empire to support him. But that's the part of the fact. But still, we can say because that's Christianity, he was a Christian. But we can also say one thing that people don't understand. Vlad was trying to fight for his country and for his people. And then he did enter also Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is an ancient pagan way of a practice. And it's not a black magic like we're talking about the voodoo or hoodoo, but does involve alchemy and certain things that will give you the power. Not like they're saying the flying and, from the windows and whatever, but you're capable to get the visions. You are capable of doing prophetic things. And that's why, now I'm going to give another hint and people can search in that. If you see Vlad's picture, Duke, you will never see him with a crown like rest of the European kings. And you will see him with a feather. And that feather and that...
And the little brooch with all the gems on it.
That's a medallion. That medallion is actually Zoroastrianism. And that was for a quite while, even now, popular in some parts of the Europe. But it's a pagan way of connecting of everything known and unknown. When certain members of the church did find that out, now you're going to be shocked. After winning and protecting more than a couple of the monasteries in February, when in 1400s, when he was attacked by the Turks, one of the monks did figure out that he also does do Zoroastrianism. So he's planned all this attack on Vlad to burn him alive. And they put him inside of, basically, it's like a 3 churches around and the monastery, and they did put him almost like a little house where they would put like a logs and the wood, and they lock him there to burn him. And of course, they didn't succeed because some of the other knights, not that he flew away again, the other knights broke the door and saved him to come from the other side. Vlad was really disappointed and hurt. And he said, everything that I did for Wallachia and to save you. I sold my soul to save you. So that's when people are thinking, but I would suggest that people do go and read a little bit about Zoroastrianism because it's not connected to voodoo, hoodoo, black magic, killing the devils.
It's actually pretty similar to Christianity. It's just much earlier Mithraism.
Exactly.
Yeah. Again, has the dual polar opposite dichotomy: good God, bad God. The other thing, if you want to try and paint, Vlad as some kind of an enemy of the Christian religion or anything, you need to somehow account for the fact that while he was the ruler in that area, that he had more churches constructed than all previous rulers combined.
Yes. Yes.
And so, yeah, I could see how he'd be feeling a little bit betrayed at that point.
Yes. And so he was really, really hurt. And but I would love people to watch, especially about it's called Black Monastery in Romania. And I did give the website so you can share it with the viewers after. It's all in English. They can see how beautiful it is. And it talks about Vlad Dracul, what he did, about Snagov Monastery, where actually he was buried, They can see many Komona Monastery. There's many and many of them that he built and protected that they will be actually turned into the mosques, because that's what was happening in Europe. Every church was turned into the mosque, just like in Turkey, Hagia Sophia. Still, when you go inside, you'll be capable of seeing the icons, and you can still see that they're coming under the painting. And the reason why, because of the way of the oils and the special, basically painting that was used at that time, cannot be covered with today's painting. So still, like, all those paintings are coming from. So at that time, that's when.
So as Nelson Muntz on The Simpsons would comment on that.
Exactly. So that's exactly what would be. And so Vlad did building of the monasteries, and then Duke, what it's also very important, we must understand that he didn't just protect Wallachia and Transylvania. He went to Croatia, he went to Serbia, he went to Hungary, he went all around Bulgaria, and many of Bulgarians were then converting under Ottoman Empire into the Muslims, and they were actually killing many of the Bulgarian Christians. And I'm going to be honest with you, he brutally killed all of the converts, and he protected Bulgaria to be what is today, the Christian country. So he protected many holy relics, and even the Roman Empire saluted him for that. So, and you go in Bucharest and you go in all of these countries, you will find the statues of basically, Vlad Dracul, basically saluting him as a hero, as a crusader, and as a knight, not as something that is written in a Hollywood story that flies on a broom and sucks people.
Wait, Dracula has a broom? I thought he just had bat wings.
Well, a lot of times, people go like, oh, he did witchcraft and he sold to the devil. But also, I must add something. I think, Duke, you would agree with me. We must understand that this was a young gentleman that was brutally abused since the day of her birth, basically.
Yeah.
Up to and he died very young. They don't know, was he 44 or 45 in a battle? And again, there was another lie, because they were saying when Turks were killing the people, Duke, during that time, their famous way of killing was the chop off your head. And the reason why, because then you will go to Sultan, what would be almost like a czar, because Sultan, it would be the ruler of the world. That's how they glorify the Sultan. So they will take the head that is chopped off and present it to the Sultan and say, okay, we have another infidel, what it means, somebody who is not basically inside of the religion. Yes. And and then if that was a big leader, they would take that and put it basically in front of their temples, in front of their mosque, to say, you will be the next one to pay the price, or we are glorifying ourselves. So when Dracula and Vlad was killed and he died very tragically, they couldn't find his head. And 99%, everybody knows that, even the Turks know that, the head was taken to the Turkey. And then secretly, the monks from the synagogue went and they get his body and they bury his body. People are asking how they did know that was his body. Very simple. Dracula had very famous crusader, basically, outfit. He always had a dragon and a cross on a chest with a fire, because dragon's order was a cross on a chest with a fire. And he had his ring, because that was also recognition of who he was. And they bury him. So he's buried there, and people are more than welcome to see it. And I also did send the pictures, and I did send you original pictures from inside of the monastery. And also, again, people can see on the website where to. So all that conspiracy, where is the head, is just taken to the Turkey to make this is our glory.
Yeah, and that's well known. They presented it to the Sultan and they put it on a pike to let everybody know that the boogeyman was dead and they didn't have to worry about him anymore.
Exactly. That was the story, and it's just like, again, just like they were saying, oh, he loved, what's the name, Lucy and Mina and whatever. This gentleman, it's ridiculous. That's how it was. And then, let's be honest, Duke, you are a smart gentleman. Everybody that is listening right now, you're going to have Ottomans knocking at your door at this moment. And, you have a son that they want to take over, and many other things. They're going to throne and kill your people, and all your people are looking, you are my savior, save us. You're going to go to UK, search for this lady, turn into werewolf. I'm like, oh my God, where this is going. He had a wife that was called Julia Shilagia, and she comes from Austria-Hungary. She was a Hungarian, not a princess, but almost like we can say like a Hungarian lady that comes from the castle of a royal blood. He married her, and they had 4 children. And after he was brutally killed, 99%, everybody knows, they escaped to, to Naples in basically in Italy, and that's where they died. And they also found lately, basically son-in-law and his daughter tomb in Italy. So this is nothing now. The history is becoming just like a puzzle. Need to put it together. But the conspiracy makes me angry. And the reason why, because I know him even as a child, before figuring out that he is my relative. I heard about the stories, and then when we did the DNA, I was really, really happy and proud about that, that this gentleman was taught as a knight, as a crusader, as a fighter for Christianity, for people, protecting people against, brutality, because it was just part of the history. That's the fact. And then, when I was growing up and then I started seeing the movies were kind of cool to watch, but they're far away from the historical fact, because they don't have nothing to do with Vlad Tepes or, Voivoda Tepes, what's actually meaning, Vladimir the Great or Vlad the Dracul. So it's far away from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just some BS that some drunken Irish guy made up to make money off of.
And
again, he was writing a story about Nosferatu. He wanted to write a vampire story, and this just happened to be a historical character that he ran across and went, "Well, this guy had a really kind of a brutal history. I'll weave that into my story." And then I'll have him come here hundreds of years later when he somehow survived as Nosferatu and come and visit England. Why in the hell would Dracula go to England? I mean, there's virtually a zillion other places on Earth he would have moved to first. So this is one of the first big glaring plot holes in the whole book. But let's not get into how ridiculous this work of fantasy is and how nothing it has to do with Dracula. But let's talk about some of the stuff that Dracula is actually, the real Dracula is attributed with having accomplished. And one of the stories that always keeps going around in pretty much any source is he's got this reputation locally as being Robin Hood.
Yes.
Fights against the rich, gives to the poor.
Yes.
And one of the stories that always gets thrown about that is that when he first managed to get control there, he had all of the boyars meet him in a big dining hall and dressed them down and said, "Hey, how many rulers do you guys remember there being in this country?" And some of the older ones could remember like a dozen. Even the youngest guys could still remember 2 or 3. And he said, "You know why? Because you're all a bunch of untrustworthy, backstabbing pieces of crap. And I'm not putting up with it." And then he walked out of the dining hall. They nailed it shut, burned it down, and got rid of them. And the rest of the story is that he actually went around and found their replacements because he was so good at disguising himself. The legend has it that he actually went around to all these areas where these former lords lived, found who he considered to be a trustworthy person in the area, gave them all their title and lands, and said, "You're in charge. There's your manor house over there, and you run things locally here. And if you try and stab me in the back, same thing's going to happen to you that happened to the guy that used to own that manor house." Now, how true is that story?
That's actually very, very true. And many people forget what truly did happen when, and I'm going to mention that and connect to your story. So basically, when Mehmed II decided to attack Wallachia for first time, when he was put on a throne, Duke, nobody knows what he asked for. He said that he has to give him thousands and thousands of the golden coins at that time. That was the money, but also to give the children. And the children were given to be Yanichars. I'm giving you exactly the word. The Yanichars were the soldiers that were trained to be basically Turkish soldiers that would be put in the front line.
They used them for shock troops because they were extremely expendable, and they drove them crazy to make sure they fought good.
Yes. And I'm just giving it exactly on how. So they would put them there. So on all that Balkan area, and of course on Romanian, it's called Yanichar. So I'm just saying. So and they also said, "You're gonna give your son," and his first son was born, and he said, "You're gonna give Michnia to us too." So he wasn't like his father. He didn't give all these children away, and he didn't give his own son. He actually stood and fight.
Well, if you
So
think about
that's
it, it's obvious why he would do that because he's like, whoa, I've been through this crap. I'm not putting any kids through this. I'm not going to have
exactly.
that weighing on my conscience.
Exactly. And that's when he started seeing who betrayed him. Because how did they come in front of, that castle at that time, like you're saying? And then he figured out, for example, that and that knight betrayed him, and that secretary betrayed him, and this one. So he figured out that there is a plot behind him to overthrow him and also, to start destroying the whole country. And that's when he said, no, I'm going to start changing this country. I'm going to start changing how it's ruled, and I'm not my father. So he started changing all these, like you're saying, the people in charge. And some of the people that are really, we can say, the right hand to him, they were very simple people. Some of them were village people. Some of them are like, people that were, just, farm people. And he figured out, they have a soul, they have a heart, and that was more important than having at that time maybe education to read and to write, but to know how to fight with the soul and the heart with your country. And then he would gather all the flour, what was very important at the time, and he would go from village to village and give them the flour to make a bread. So he did a lot. So when some people mention him as a Robin Hood, he really was, because he was trying to protect everything that was destroyed also by his own father and forgotten, because to his father it was just a throne. I'm sitting on it. I really don't care. If he sold his own children, why he won't do it to the village people or to rest of the,
Yeah, completely ruthless and doesn't care at
exactly.
all. Which is exactly how they always try and characterize Dracula, especially for this burning down the hall with all the nobles in it incident. But it's very clearly written in the histories prior to that point that this was literally going on. And that noble class in those areas basically thought they were running the show. And if they didn't like who was in charge, they just stab him in the back and have him overthrown. And a couple years later, they get somebody new. So, Dracula had grown up with seeing this stuff, and he just went, "You're the problem.
Yes. Yes.
We're getting rid of you first."
Yes. And that's why he became so strong, because he had a support of people, and he had a support of locals. He had a support of the other countries. And then the other countries figured out that this little Wallachia is becoming a fighter, becoming a real dragon against the Ottoman Empire, not having so many soldiers like at that time Germany or Bavaria had, because Germany didn't exist. Many of these, Hungary didn't have so many. But this small Wallachia was surviving, and thriving.
And this is a tiny country. This is
very tiny.
This ain't like the size of Texas or something. This is a pretty small country.
Very, very tiny. And then basically that's when they all started knocking at his door, and they said, "Hey, let's join in and let's be part of, this order like we already started with your father." And they renew, and even up to today, Order of a Dragon is still alive. It's more like a figure, we can say,
ceremonial.
But still, there's many like leaders and, church leaders and people that gather not to fight against anybody, but just to keep a tradition. And like you're saying, ceremony, what was kept as basically a memory of some great heroes, including Vlad.
Well, it's nice to set the record straight on some of this stuff, and I was always interested in some of his military tactics and whatnot, being a war gamer. And they always talk about Mother Russia defeating armies that invade them, and Mother Russia usually defeats them with lousy weather. But one of the things that they did in World War II is scorched earth, withdraw all the peasants, withdraw all the livestock that you can, burn everything else down so the invading army hasn't got it. Of course, he did the same thing with Napoleon. Well, this is something that actually your ancestor was doing before those guys were doing it.
Yes.
As Mehmed and his army of jerks were trying to invade, he was withdrawing everybody, poisoning the wells, burning all the crops. So now they've got this really long supply line problem. And when they finally get to the capital city of Turgovist, and he's inside with his little piddly tiny force and outnumbered like at least 10-1, and those numbers vary by accounts, but it was at least 10-1. and they're outside the city walls going, okay, we're going to lay siege. Well, we're kind of running out of food, and people are getting like the plague or something. And there's a whole forest of stakes out here that have our countrymen sitting on them, rotting away. That's probably not a very hygienic place to set up your camp. And during the night, Vlad, who is very brave and an excellent fighter and speaks Turkish incredibly well,
Oh, yes.
disguises himself as one of the Turks, sneaks out of the castle and goes right into the middle of their camp, trying to figure out where Mehmed's tent is, because he wants to personally kill that son of a bitch.
Yes.
So he thinks he gets it right, and he goes back inside the castle. He marshals his troops. They open the drawbridge, and him and his cavalry ride out in the middle of the night and attack this gigantic force outside the wall. And unfortunately, it was the general of the army who he thought was Mehmed's tent, wasn't him.
Yes.
But they did get that guy. And this was enough to terrorize Mehmed so bad that he didn't even want to be there.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Every single word that you said, it's true. And I'm thankful for that. He knew like Turkish language really well. He knew their custom. He knew the way they fight. He knew their strategy. And of course, that famous, we can say a famous way of killing Mehmed, and instead of killing Mehmed, he killed the general. That was more than enough to say, this is
really Mehmed's like, the general in that tent right next to me got killed by Dracula last night. I don't think it's safe for me to be here, even with my giant army. And also think for a second about the gigantic balls on Dracula. Yes. This guy's the leader of the country. He doesn't have to be spy in the enemy camp.
No, of course. And imagine what kind of courage you have, because 99% of people will know who you are, but he was capable of going in there and still with his tactic scare Mehmed enough to say, back off. So I must say, many people need to understand that this was a really big fighter and big warrior, out there that it's very rare to find these days. So, to have such a heart and such a, a love, it's quite amazing. Because a lot of times today, we talk about not real heroes. We talk about Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. Those are not heroes.
No, they're posers. They get paid to pretend to be something that they're not.
And we love their talent. We love the movies. Yeah, no worries. But these people
they suck. I don't care. But yeah,
exactly.
You guys could like
it. They are not heroes. They are not heroes.
No.
Our heroes are, for example, now that are in front line, men and women in uniform, that they protect us and serve us. And I salute and say thank you to each and every one of them, even at this moment, and I know many. But to say, and we spent, like you're saying, the Hollywood destroyed this character. And my goal is actually to watch his character and watch his face. And just like today, we are discussing who this wonderful hero, not just of Transylvania and Wallachia, but of the entire Europe was.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you can make a strong case that him and his tactics and the stuff that he did there managed to stave off an invasion of Europe. And other places of Europe were not so lucky. Spain was taken over, and they had to spend 500 years Reconquista fighting them back off and pushing them back across the Mediterranean again.
Yes. Many, like if you take 99% of the Balkan was all under the Turkish Empire over 500 years. And starting the, Suleiman the Great, the first, up to Mehmed II. So they were ruling over 500 years over the Europe. So they were, basically being conquered. Their culture was changed. Their religion was changed. Beliefs, everything was just the way it was done. And it took quite a long time for, each and every country to, basically go back to their beliefs, to their system, who they are and what they are. And still in many countries around that area, I don't know, Duke, if you ever went, I know Europe very well, you will find many traits of Turkish Empire, some structure of the buildings, some way of cooking, even some words. And you'll go like, huh? So because it was over 500 years, so what's quite normal. Yes.
Parts of it permeated the culture, never to be expunged again. But
Yes.
that's history, you know.
Yeah, that's of
And
course.
if there's
And
one
you
thing that
know,
you could say about that area of the world, it's very balkanized. As a matter of fact, that's why they came up with that word.
that's a good one. That's a good one. You know, if you talk about Vlad as a hero, Vlad was something that people don't understand in this, I can say, misunderstood in this part of the world, because I actually, I'm proud to be Canadian, but I must say, because of my background and where I'm coming from, of course, I do know more. But he's misunderstood, and he's also misrepresented who he is. He's far away of being a, you know, a Batman, changing from one face to another, sucking blood, and also destroying the churches and burning the churches. I think that would really destroy his heart, because
Yes.
he carried the
Exactly the
cross.
opposite of what he did. He built churches, he encouraged churches. He didn't want the Muslim Empire taking over
No,
his
no, and
homeland.
you know, the way they represented him, my friend, it broke his. I think it's breaking his heart, and the reason why, it's actually something that he's far away from it, and that's why I encourage people to read the history. I also encourage people, you know, to listen more and to understand that, you know, 99% of the stories that you hear out there, it's not just about Dracula. Hear and listen before you start to judge, because 99% of them are lying. They're fabricated just to make a fantasy and to make us kind of explode. But imagine, Duke, you are a very smart, intelligent gentleman. How would you feel giving your entire life, your childhood and everything, for something that, you know, his country stand for? That was a, they were Christian country. They were strong. They were proud. You know, they were fighters. And now there we have his statues and all around the Europe as a hero, while this gentleman decided to bash him down and destroy every single, you know, good deed that he did.
Mm.
So it
Oh, as
makes me
if
a little
all the
bit angry.
backstabbing while he was alive wasn't enough. Now we got some drunken syphilitic Irishman a couple hundred years comes along and takes a dump all over his reputation even more.
And you know what is also very bad about that? It's actually when you read about Abraham Stoker a little bit more, his background, you know, of course, he's Irish, but, you know, he was like in theater, he was doing this. He was also just like a helper to one of the gentlemen who was a sir there. He was an actor. So he wasn't a really successful person, and it took him quite a while for even the story, you know, to become alive, because it was discovered in Pennsylvania. I then turned into these crazy movies, you know, that we watch. But, you know, they are entertaining, that I'm saying, but they're far away from the truth. And somebody who is really related to that whole area and to that story, or he has any feelings for those people or the blood, just like myself, it makes me hurt inside, because you are actually dirtying the face of our national hero, and that's totally far away from it.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason he's a national hero because he wasn't
Yes,
a zero. He
yeah,
was definitely
exactly.
not a
Yeah,
zero.
thank
And
you, thank
taking
you for
somebody
that.
else's national hero and trying to turn it into your villain is pretty reprehensible by anybody's standards, and especially by modern day woke standards. Think about that, woke people, all three of you that are actually listening to this show. That's cultural appropriation to turn him into a devil.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's
the devil was a, you know, and especially at that time when this movie came out, it was really an era of, you know, devil and cult and occult, and, you know, there's all these witches flying and black potions and all different kind of things. So it was kind of a good timing for this to be made, because there's always a different era that brings something. There's like, at this time we get aliens, and then at this time we get Star Wars, then we get, you know, witches. So at this time was time, you know, for like a Dracula to come alive and fly around the castle. You know, castle still can be visited. So there's I would actually invite anybody to go to Transylvania in Wallachia themselves and visit the beautiful castle. But this is not just one castle. Vlad Dracul had many castles around the Transylvania and Wallachia, and 99% are open to public eyes, and people can see them. Even Prince Charles went with Camilla there. He loves to go there, and he enjoys it, of course, because of the whole culture and the beauty in it. It's totally far away from what people are saying, because when you go inside, you're capable of seeing all this magic of the knighthood and crusaders and big fireplaces and the libraries. And actually, it's not that dark. It's very, very light inside. And many people even say that it's warm. And so it's quite, I cannot wait to go myself. So I'm quite excited, because that's on my list. And I have many friends and even people inviting me now, because now they know that I carry that blood. So I'm in connection with many people that, they're saying, you are his live descendant. We want you to come in and, to be part of this. So I'm quite excited also to meet some of the people that are my people and that are connected to my bloodstream. So I'm quite excited.
Yeah, that sounds like that would just be a blast.
Yes.
I know
yes.
I don't have any famous and ruthless overlords in my lineage. And I have a couple real interesting characters. Actually, for anybody that's into pirate lore, they know about the name Grace O'Malley. Mm-hmm. That is one of my ancestors.
Oh.
And not only was she a lady pirate, she was the captain of a pirate ship. So how badass do you have to be? No, wait, she was way more badass than that. She had a fleet of pirate ships. Oh, wait, let's go up one more step. She captured a city on the coast of Ireland and made it her pirate fleet base.
Wow.
That's how badass she was. And they still got like stories and plays and stuff about her that are out there, because she was kicking butt.
I love the woman. My mother, it's quite amazing, but I'll mention this, Duke. When I was a child, because I'm a psychic and a medium and I can see things, she would always tell me, you are different and you must stay a strong or passionate woman. That's who you are. That's what's in your bloodstream. And then when we actually did find out that we also have, basically the story was confirmed that we do have Dracul's blood inside, because like, you are a true dragon's daughter, go and fight. But I will share something with you, Duke, and with everybody that is.
Do you think that's where your superpowers come from being related to Dracula?
No, I would be honest. He didn't have those superpowers.
Oh, dang it.
And that's what people think. No, they came from my great grandmother, from my mom's mama. My mom's mama was a psychic and a healer. And she was a really well-known woman. She even used that when she was placed in concentration camps during World War II to help people. So that's where it comes from that lineage. And when talking about, but what I have, I'm a fighter. And one day you're going to be shocked. Before we even did the DNA testing, there was no movies, nothing. I fall asleep. And in my sleep, I was inside of this huge room that I never recognized. And then the gentleman sitting, but he had his head down, and he said to me, please wash my face. And I turned around. All what I did see was a big ring. He had a big ring, and I woke up. And I was talking to my mother about that, and for quite a long time, I never pay attention to that. And I thought it was just a dream, or maybe he was trying to send me a message, but it did stay in my head. And then when we did the DNA testing, I had Vlad coming into my dreams more than a couple times. And that's when I decided to do this mission. And I'm now doing the audio and the written book. And it's called The True Story About Son of a Dragon. So I'm working really hard on it, and I have some historians as a part of it, some people that directly connected with Romanian people. So I'm going to give the real fact and the real story about Son of a Dragon and wash the face of my great uncle.
Well, I'm glad whatever small capacity I could be involved in helping with this, because
you
it's
are
been
fantastic.
In my, my wheelhouse of attention for quite a long time, that this guy's getting seriously mispainted in public media and made to look like he's some kind of an undead monster, when actually how you should think of him is he's a combination of Robin Hood and Conan the Barbarian with a cool
Yes.
hat with a feather on it.
Yes. Yes. And when you say that, I'm really thankful actually that, when you invited me and you said you wanted to talk about, Vlad, I was happy. And the reason why, because that's my goal. My goal is to wash his face. My goal is to show to the world who he is. And having his blood in me, I also feel that's my duty. And now, being Canadian and being on this part of the world, far away from, all the stories and everything, closer to many people like yourself that are involved in social media, that are involved in, all this broadcasting. I'm getting basically a platforms where I can show who he really is. He was a fighter. He was a Robin Hood. He was a knight. He was a father. He loved his children and he loved his wife to death. Everybody know he loved Julia so much. Julia would be originally. He loved her to death, and that's a true story.
And let's keep this in mind too, just to put it in modern day standards. He was a populist and a nationalist. Those things aren't very popular right now, are they? More reason why he has bad propaganda on him.
Exactly. So, and I didn't want to say that, but thank you. I wasn't sure if I can say it. So thank you for bringing that up. So that's why. But also, he saved so many children on that day when he decided to say no to Mehmed II. He saved hundreds and hundreds and thousands of the children that were not given to Ottoman Turks to be Yanichars because he said no to Mehmed II. That was basically what he wanted to do, and that's when all the fight did start.
Well, the other thing that comes out in some of these stories is how, we were talking about this earlier, how they were portraying him as the boogeyman.
Yes.
He's the boogeyman in the cage. And this had permeated so far, it was even completely part of what was going on inside of his country too, because there was a merchant that came through that stopped at the public drinking fountain to get a drink, and there's this big goblet made of gold with gems on it.
Yes.
And it's not chained up or anything. And he asked one of the local guys, "Why is that thing sitting there?" And he said, "Oh, that's our public drinking mug."
Yes.
You're kidding me. Nobody stole it. And he goes, "Oh, no. Nobody steals anything in this country." And then Dracula himself actually made the boast at one point that you could walk from one side of his country to the other with a bag of gold in your arms, and no one would dare to try and take it from you.
It's true. He did have a rule and order. He didn't, he didn't allow basically his country to grow like the crime and, basically thieves to flourish, especially at that time, a crime was really high. And robbery would happen. Anybody going from one side of country to another, they would pop into like these little, we can say almost like a little bars or like restaurants where people will sit and drink. They would come in and they would slaughter and kill everybody. What basically Vlad did in his country, he also did put the order and the rule. That's true. So if you did steal or if you did kill, yes, you would be prosecuted.
Penalty was going to be horrible and public, and they were making a display out of it. So everybody else locally saw it and went, "Whoa, I don't want that happening to me. I'm not going to do that."
That was again. I love it what you said.
The use of terror tactics. He used terror tactics on everything. It worked really good for him.
Yeah. And the reason why he did a display at that time, for example, there was no TV, right? So, so if you place that in front of the people, I'm not saying it's beautiful, it's terrifying. But then if you think about it and you see something like that, you're not going to do it yourself.
Right. So, it's not like you're hearing the story from the village 5 miles down the road that so-and-so did something bad and got executed. Somebody in your own little town did something really bad and got executed publicly. And it was horrible. And you don't want to have that happen to you. Suddenly you're a lot more law-abiding. And the other thing that comes up with this sort of thing is if you want any kind of trade happening in your country, and especially in those days where you had like organization, the Hanseatic League, amongst all of the merchants up in the Germany area, just so they could protect their own interests, because they kept getting attacked by these little petty lords all the time. Every 5 miles down the road, there'd be some more of these fake knights would come riding out and go, "Oh, give us money to go through our little 5 miles of territory." And they kind of got sick of that, and they bought their own army and stomped their butts. Well, the same thing was true in Wallachia, Transylvania. You're right on the border of the bad guys, maybe not that appealing of a place to do trade in the first place. And then if you have to worry about every time you walk into the country, bandits are going to try and kill you or steal your stuff, nobody's going to want to trade with them. So that was like an absolute necessity that he had to get that under control.
That's true. Totally what you explained. It's very important because at that time, if you don't have a rule and order, your country is ruined. That's the way it goes. And then there was a lots of betrayal. There was a lots of, like you're saying, you know, this group goes against this group. And he had a support of local people, and he had a support of a church. So he had their trust, and many poor did love him. And the reason why, because for first time they had a bread on their tables. And he would always say, if I have a bread, so you will too. This was his words. So he sharing the piece of bread with the people was very important. And he would do that lots of times when he would arrive at certain villages. He would stand in front and he would share the bread with the people, you know, and the reason why, to say, if I have a bread, you will have it too. And many people do forget that this gentleman didn't just sit in his castle and send, you know, combat mission and people to get. He was always in front lines. He was always there with all of his military personnel. And he was always there with his people. And
according to historical reports, he was not only a brilliant leader, but he was a badass in a fight.
Yes.
And that really inspires morale in your troops when, hey, the leader isn't back in the castle. He's right there leading the charge and beating the crap out of everything in front of us. I'm following him. You know? And
the truth, what is, Mehmed II, and even, you know, when Radu came in, his brother. So that's quite shocking. Imagine when they collided, and when Radu was going to take over his throne and take over the Wallachia, and he had the sword, big sword under his throat, and he said to him, "Go back and don't ever come back." These are the famous words. He could kill him, but he still didn't. And that's when everybody got shocked. And they said he didn't kill Radu. They were saying he's still a human. That's what the Turks were saying. Vlad was always a human. It just shows that his brother. And, you know, he remembered probably how they were together in all these, you know, catacombs. They were being crucified, basically killed, abused, and seeing all different kind of stuff in front. Because what Turks also did, many people don't know. And I'll explain that. They would use this pile, and then on a pile, they will put any kind of, you know, grease. So this grease is usually used from the lamb. And then it will go from your rectum, it will pass your major organs and go through your mouth. It will take about 2 weeks till you die. And then they will go around the people with like a sponge, or at that time the cloth of water, and put it onto the mouth, so that the death, it would be painful and horrifying. And Vlad and Rad did see that. And another thing they would do, they would crucify people, but not just with the nails, like the Christ was crucified. What they would do, they would take this wire, and then they would put behind the back, so it's also their organs, and the wire would be pinned down, so it will take them about 5-6 days to die. This is all done, my friend, and that's what these two young children did see and live for almost 11-12 years like that. Imagine.
Yeah, imagine how warped you'd get if that's how you grew up, being a prisoner and being tortured and seeing this kind of stuff all the time.
Yes.
And it would give you a really extremely powerful dislike for the people that were doing it.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's no wonder he took revenge on his abusers. I mean,
of course,
geez, you know.
Of course. Of course, the abuse is a huge thing that he went through, you know, and trauma too. I'm sure he had major trauma. Well, you know, he had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, since the basically his childhood up to his adulthood, and then going into the battle, seeing, you know, so many dead people, killing the people, protecting the country, blood, you know, flying everywhere. Of course, he's going to have PTSD, and some things that he did, maybe they were not that pleasant, of course, but they were also that because of his trauma and because he was exposed to it since the early age.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not try and paint an unrealistic picture here. You know, he
Yes,
was really brutal. He used terror methods.
yes,
He was
yes.
not squeamish whatsoever. But a
No,
lot of the stuff about him is also exaggerated or just plain false.
yes,
And yeah, did he have PTSD? Oh, you can guarantee it with
yeah,
what he went through. But don't
yes,
forget the kind of times this guy grew up in and stuff. And I'm not, again, trying to be apologetic for him. But
yes,
that area of the world was incredibly violent when he was living there. That's what he grew up with. That's what he saw all the time.
yes,
This is just
yes,
like basic behavior, except
yes,
he figured out how to use terror as his weapon against
yes,
his enemies.
yes,
And boy, did
yes,
he use it well.
yes, yes,
So
and
well that it still propagandizes him centuries later that he was a
yes.
horrible monster because he scared the living crap out of everybody so well.
But he, all that, like you're saying, the propaganda and all that, we can say knighthood and all that bravery, and of course, and certain things that were done, they went under the carpet, and the story from the Hollywood came totally far away from what he is. So to me, it's very important to wash his face, like I'm saying, and bring his
Yeah.
honor back. What he was a great leader, a Robin Hood, savior, a crusader, and a wonderful lover of his own people and the humankind. That's what he was.
And that's why as people remember him as this wonderful folk hero
Yes.
because, probably for the first time in their history, they're like, whoa, the guy on the throne actually cares about us. Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yes.
That'll get a whole lot of loyalty out of a
Yes.
population that's
Yes.
never had anything but a figurehead that was a giant parasite on them.
Yes.
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 So yeah.
Yes.
That makes a huge difference. That makes a big impression on them.
That's my puppy knocking at the door. Can I open her door?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Because she's knocking at the door. She wants to come in. And
She's
I'll
like,
just...
it's time to be in here. I'm supposed to be part of the interview too. We're talking about great Uncle Dracula. I want to be in the room.
Come and say hello. I will come and say hello. She's knocking at the door and she wants to say hello. So this is Maggie. Say hi.
Hey, cutie.
Say hi.
Isn't she pretty?
She is. And she went upstairs probably to play a little bit and drink some water, but she loves to be in here and she loves to play with me. She loves her family. She's our love and joy. She loves my son. So she's a wonderful, wonderful joy of our family.
Well, it's we're at about an hour here. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about Dracula, or did we cover most of it?
I think we did cover the most of it. So it's up to you but I think we did pretty well.
Well, for everybody else out there, if you want to get more information on this, of course, the lovely Danielle has a book coming out on it. There's also the already available historical Dracula by Florescu Radu. And there are some other good books out there that can give you more information on this. Don't get your historical information from a fiction writer. Bram, bad, Bram, down.
I just want to say, Duke, thank you very much for having me on your show. Thank you for giving me opportunity to wash the face of my uncle, give back his honor, and show to the world what he really was. And that was a true leader, Robin Hood, lover of his country, lover of a people, crusader, and a true lover of a humankind, and fighter for a freedom. That's what we need even today.
Fighter. Yep. And there's another thing I want to bring up, that the reason he's still fondly remembered by his countrymen is because he never abandoned them.
No.
He never stabbed them in the back.
Yes.
He got stabbed in the back by his biggest ally, John Hunyadi, over there in Hungary, who decided to throw him in prison instead of backing him up. He got stabbed in back by the monasteries that decided he was evil and tried to burn him.
Yes.
He didn't stab them in the back. They stabbed him
by
in the
his
back.
own brother, Radu.
By his own brother. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. So you would think that would more than be enough to make somebody incredibly bitter and they just want to give up. But he didn't.
Exactly. And that's what, to me, makes me happy. I'm working really hard on this book. I will let you know when it comes out, and we can meet again and discuss, But to me, my goal is to show the world the real Vlad Tepes, what is his real name, or real Vladimir Dracul III. And I'm really honored to have his blood running through me, and I'm honored to call him my great uncle.
Well, it's been an honor to have you on the show and have one of his relatives on here to clear the record about him and talk about what the guy was actually like. And you're right, you know, he was an amazing crusader. He was a combination of Robin Hood, Conan the Barbarian with a cool hat with a feather on it. Just keep that in mind. Take that image of some kind of bat-winged thing that some Irish guy made up, throw it out the window. Real Dracula, combination Robin Hood, Conan the Barbarian with cool hat with feather on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you again for having me.
You're very welcome, and it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to having you back again in the future. We'll have to have you on to talk about some more of all of this stuff that you know about that I know lots about too, so we can have lots of fun talking about it.
It would be my pleasure. It would be my pleasure, Duke. You have a wonderful evening, and all the blessings to you, and, you know, stay strong, healthy, and safe, and I want to know more about that Bigfoot soon coming from your radio programming.
All righty. Well, we'll definitely do that. And meanwhile, everybody, you know the drill. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puckwudgie. And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.